Yo guys, after Sean Connery left for the second time after Diamonds Are Forever, the producers once again were left with no leading men, but that changed when Live and Let Die came out in 1973. So let's talk about it. Before we begin, I might touch on some plot points in this video, so if you don't want anything get spoiled, skip to the end of the video to see my rating. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. And with all that said, let's get started with the bad. And the main thing here is that there are some elements about the story I don't care that much about. And that's mostly because they aren't that well developed. But also the things that are pretty well developed I don't care for as much. Like I don't care all that much about the voodoo stuff, which also has nothing to do with the Live and Let Die novel. And also the main scheme of Kananga doesn't really go anywhere. It is mentioned one time what his dastardly plan is, and also the reveal that Mr. Big and Kananga are the same person didn't do that much for me. I never really fell for it, and I doubt anyone else did. And man, Kananga gets one of the worst villain deaths in the entire franchise. I don't know what they were thinking. There are some types of jokes that I don't really like in this movie, and most of the Roger Moore movies for that matter. Those stereotypical characters meant for the gags. Like in this movie you get Miss Bell and Sheriff Pepper. Well, I don't think are that funny. The funniest moments come from Roger Moore himself, so I don't think you need these side characters for other jokes. And speaking of Roger Moore, I will have some very positive things about him to say, but let's get the negatives out of the way first. Unfortunately, Roger Moore isn't all that believable in the stunt work, the fight scenes, or his cold-blooded moments. And his cold-blooded moments in his movies are pretty minimal anyway. But most of the fight scenes come off pretty underwhelming and awkward. And I think it's a bit of a shame that Roger Moore's introduction is so simple. Like after the credits, it immediately cuts to James Bond as if he has always been Bond. Sean Connery and George Lazenby had some cool build-up to the reveal of his face, but with Roger Moore, they didn't do anything like that, unfortunately. But luckily, we can now go to the positives of this movie. I think this was a great debut for Roger Moore. I like that he had a completely different take on the character than Sean Connery did. Roger Moore is without a doubt the most humorous James Bond, and most of his jokes are very funny. While Sean Connery's Bond also had a lot of humor, that was more in a clever, witty way. Roger Moore's Bond is funny in a sarcastic way, and he has a lot of funny and cheesy one-liners, but I think it fits his Bond and his movies very well. And he also looks great in this movie, and he has a couple of great outfits, like especially his suit when he leaves the New York airport. And even the movie itself is, to me, a lot of fun. Most of the things are a big step up from Diamonds Are Forever. The look, the action. Diamonds Are Forever looked relatively cheap, while this movie looks a bit higher budget. And The action scenes are a lot better, apart from the fighting scenes. But it has some very solid chase scenes. The double-decker chase and the speedboat chase. Those are some amazing chase scenes. And it also got a lot of cool stunts, like most of the boat jumps are very cool. And it's always cool to know that those stunts are done for real in these movies, and they are filmed very well. But the most impressive stunt to me was the part where Bond ran over the crocodiles. And yes, that was also done for real. Not by Roger Moore himself, obviously, but by the owner of the crocodile farm, whose name was Kananga. And the producers liked him so much that they named the main villain after him. But the crocodile stunt, it's absolutely insane. Running over the back of real crocodiles. Those weren't fake crocodile props or anything. They were tied down by their legs, but there generally was a man over their backs. It's absolutely insane. And I also think that this movie feels very fresh after coming after Diamonds Are Forever. Because other than Goldfinger, all of the Bond movies up to this point had Spectre as the enemy. And here we have some completely new villains. And Kananga is a pretty cool and memorable villain. Yet Kodo give a great performance as Kananga. And I think that Tee was a great henchman. He was also very memorable. And we also get a pretty interesting Bond girl who has psychic powers. People take issue with the way Bond tricks Solitaire into sleeping with him. But I always found it hilarious how he had all the cards sorted out. And besides, the cards already predicted it. They would be lovers, so who cares anyway? And Solitaire is just a beautiful woman, and she has relevance to the story. And even though she has to be saved a couple of times, I don't think of her as some helpless bimbo. And this movie has one of the greatest James Bond themes of all time. I think you've all heard it by now. Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney and Wings, which rightfully got nominated for an Oscar, which I still think it should have won. And the score of this movie isn't done by John Barry, but for the first time it was done by someone else. This time it was done by George Martin. And I really like his score. It sounds very different to John Barry, but it still feels very James Bond-like. Just like this entire movie. It is very different than most of the movies we had before this, but it still feels like a very fun James Bond movie. In the end, I'm gonna give this movie a 7 in terms of quality and a 7.5 on the entertainment scale. And I think this is a solid addition to the Bond franchise. Now comment down below your thoughts about the movie Live and Let Die and Roger Moore as James Bond. And also subscribe to my channel and like this video. And as always, I will return.